accidentally ate the murder weapon and you won't believe how it happened. This story is called Lamb to the Slaughter by Roald Dahl, and the plot twist is insane. A woman named Mary is waiting for her husband, who's a police officer, to come home. She's pregnant and happy with her marriage, but when her husband comes home, she realizes something is wrong. He says that he has something to tell her, and this is where all the drama happens. He says that he's going to leave her, and Mary is in shock. She walks to the kitchen and says that she's gonna cook dinner, and there she finds a leg of lamb. Her husband says don't bother because he's gonna go out instead. And Mary, who's enraged, swings the leg of lamb at her husband's head and unalives him. And this is where it gets crazy. So she's thinking, my God, my husband is unalived. I'm pregnant, I cannot go to jail. So she puts the leg of lamb in the oven and cooks it. Then she goes to the grocery store and talks to the grocer about how she was gonna make her husband dinner. Then she comes home and finds her husband's body and pretends like she has no idea what's going on and calls the police. 2 officers show up and they begin asking her questions. They start searching for the murder weapon, convinced that it will lead them to whoever's responsible. But hours later, they found nothing. And this is when Mary comes in and asks them if they're hungry. Then she goes back into the kitchen and takes the leg of lamb out of the oven. And the police officers begin eating the leg of lamb that she just used to unalive her husband. The story ends with one of the officers asking about where the murder weapon is, and the other one saying it's probably right under our noses. So yeah, I realize there's a lot more disturbing and shocking books that I need to tell you guys about. So let me know in the comments if you want me to make more of these.
This is why you should never trust your friend if they tell you that their pet don't bite. Charla Nash would go over to her friend's house, Sandra, every now and then to watch over her 200-pound chimpanzee. Charla knew straight off the bat that she did not like that chimpanzee because it always scared her. There was even a time where the chimpanzee jumped on Charla's back and ripped out a chunk of her hair. Charla started crying, but her friend Sandra thought it was funny. Sandra would not be laughing at anything that chimpanzee did much longer after this day. One day, Charla gets a call from Sandra saying her chimpanzee wouldn't go back in the cage and she needed some help. Charla drove over there to help her friend, and immediately after, Sandra would have to call the police. By the time the police arrived, Charla was laying on the ground with half of her face eaten off, no jaw, her nose hanging from her face by a piece of her skin, and with both of her hands ripped off. This is what Charla looked like before her attack. Her entire face was mutilated after the attack, but since the photos are super graphic, they'll be posted on my Instagram story. Part 2 will include the unsettling phone call Sandra made to the police and how she described her friend getting eaten and ripped apart. Story time at the time my Tinder date kidnapped me and left me out in a big field in the middle of nowhere. And trust me, you're gonna want to sit down for this story time. This happened to me as a senior in high school, so I had just turned 18. Felt like I was getting old and I needed to find a partner before I became too old and wrinkly and nobody wanted me anymore. My friends told me to download Tinder and I met this guy named Kyle. He was a sophomore in college going to the same college that I was planning on going to after I graduated. He only lived 30 minutes away and he was really sweet, so I thought I could really grow a strong bond with this man. We FaceTimed a few times before we decided to go to the movies together. After the movie, we went back to his apartment. He said that his apartment was close to the college, but we were driving pretty far from the college. We get to his apartment and he offers me a drink. Me being stupid, I take the drink and I drink it. I noticed that my data was completely shut off and there was no Wi-Fi. So I ask him why and he takes a minute to answer. He says he just couldn't afford it, which was a big red flag. Because how did he FaceTime me all those times at his place? I automatically lose trust for him. He heads to the bathroom and I take that opportunity to look around. I noticed this black bag and I opened it. Something was telling me to look in that bag and what I saw will blow your mind. Part 2 of the time my Tinder date kidnapped me and left me out in a big field in the middle of nowhere. So he leaves the room and I decide to look around. I see this suspicious looking black bag and I decide to look inside. It was filled with knives covered in blood. I was in denial, child. I was like, maybe it's ketchup. I was coming up with every excuse trying to calm myself down. There is no way that I was so unlucky and got paired up on Tinder with a murderer. Now my fingerprints are on the bag. I needed to figure out a way to get home ASAP. I start feeling unusually tired. Like I could fall asleep any second. And I remembered that drink that he gave me when I first arrived at his apartment, he probably put something in it. My main goal now was just to stay awake. He came back in the room, I acted like everything was fine. He's a big man and if he knew that I was onto him, everything could have went south. I tell him that I'm getting pretty tired and I'm ready to go home. Last thing I wanted to do was get in a car with him again. I wasn't even 100% sure where I was. Before we leave the room, I see him grab the black bag. We get into the car. Unable to fight off the medicine, I drift asleep. And when I wake up, we were on a deserted road surrounded by big fields. Part 3 of the time my Tinder date kidnapped me and left me out in a big field in the middle of nowhere. Forgot to mention in the last part, after he grabbed the black bag when we were about to leave, I asked him why he was grabbing it. He said he was going to drop it off to a friend after he dropped me off back home. Which was a fat lie, and here's why. Once I wake up, I noticed that we're on a deserted road surrounded by big fields. I instantly started to freak out because I knew that you did not have to pass these big fields to get back to my house. I was getting kidnapped and there was nothing that I could do. He looks over, notices that I'm awake, and looks right back at the road. I try to calm down so things don't get hectic because like I said, he was a big man. Then I ask him where we're going. He just tells me to go back to sleep. Yeah, like, let me just take a nap right now in the car with a stranger who has a bag full of knives, taking me to an unknown location. What a good idea. Obviously, I did not go back to sleep. I had to think of a plan. Little did Kyle know, I always keep a taser in my purse, no matter where I'm going. It was literally my last resort. There was nothing else that I could do. I had to single-handedly take him out, and that's what I did. Quickly reached into my purse, got my taser, and tased him in the face. And that's when things went south. Part 4, the time my Tinder date kidnapped me and left me out in a big field in the middle of nowhere. So we're in the car and I tase him in the face with my taser. And once I realized that I had access to my taser, I knew that he was not very smart. Because he put something in my drink and I passed out. Which means he could have looked at my personal belongings and seen the taser. But he didn't. So after I tase him in the face, he swerves the car. He grabs me by my hair. So I take off my seatbelt, turn to him, put my legs up, and start kicking. Now, I don't have very much arm strength, but these legs gonna kill you. At this point, he's not even driving anymore. The car is going full speed by itself. So as I'm kicking him in the face, he reaches for the black bag which was on his lap. That's when I did. I quickly reach behind me, unlock the door, literally roll out. I see the car continue to swerve for a few seconds after, but then he manages to make it stable again. He just keeps going straight, never turns back. So now I'm in the middle of nowhere and all I see is big fields for miles and miles. My purse, my taser, and my phone were nowhere to be found. So I start walking. I walk for what seems like hours until I finally start seeing houses. And to the first one I see, they let me in, I tell them what happened. They let me use their phone so I can call the police. Part 5 of the time my Tinder date kidnapped me and left me out in a big field in the middle of nowhere. So now I'm in someone's house and I'm safe and they let me call the police. Police arrive and then I tell them what happened. I gave them a description, I told them everything that I could remember from that night. And I showed them his Tinder page. One of the officers go back to their car. And when they come back, they let me know that his name is not in the system. And at that point, I'm confused. Because did this man fake his identity as well? The police officers ask me where I live and I let them know. And they go, wow, that's pretty far from here. And so I'm like, how far? They answer, about 3 hours away. So that means I was knocked out in his car for 3 hours. I knew we were in the car for 3 hours because going to his apartment did not feel like an hour drive. He was driving for 3 hours. At that point, I'm spooked and I just want to go home. So the police officers take me home and they told me they do more background checks on him and call me and let me know. I got a call like a week later and they told me his real name was Jason. He wasn't in college. He was wanted in Texas for kidnapping some other girls.
If you ever feel lonely, don't do what he did. Skylar was living in an old house in the countryside with his parents when he found a mirror in the closet. But when he looked into the mirror, he saw a girl standing behind him. She said her name was Nana and you can only see her through the mirror. One day Nana said, come over here and play with me. And Skylar promised he would, but he never did. He graduated, moved out, and got married. But one day, years later, something changed. As fate would have it, Skylar came back to the house. And as an adult, Skylar convinced himself that Nana was just his imaginary friend, but he was wrong. Him and his pregnant wife went to his parents' house for a visit and decided to look at some of his old stuff. That's when Skylar found the mirror again. Instantly, he remembered Nana. And through the mirror in the very back, a dark shadow began to form the face of Nana. She began walking towards Skylar through the mirror and said, why didn't you come back? I've been waiting for you. Skylar didn't know what to say. He was shocked. Then Nana said, come over here. Let's play forever. Skylar said, no, I have a wife now and a baby soon. I can't. Nana looked upset. She paused for a while before saying, I see, you're all grown up now. If you don't want to play with me, I'll have to find someone else. Someone just like you.